Hello everybody, Kamiron Freeman here with an update for you. So, this whole COVID-19 thing has us all locked away in our houses. Most of us don't have anything to do right now. Some of us are still working. A lot of us are not. A lot of us are just sitting in our homes, browsing Facebook, watching Netflix or YouTube or whatever the case may be. Most people are freaking out, don't know what's going to happen with the future. But see, here's the thing, and here's the wonderful thing about this whole pandemic that's happening right now is this gives us the time, right? To finally, once and for all, it gives the grand population of the entire world a chance to finally sit down and actually think about things, right? Such as, are our governments actually working in the best interest of the people that they represent? Are our banks working in the best interest of the people they represent? Are our big international businesses operating in the best interest of the people? In other words, are the people, the 1% that owns 90% of the wealth of the world, operating in the best interest of the other 99% of the world that's sharing the other 10% of the wealth, right? And that's kind of a stupid question because if you think about it, if the 1% are hoarding 90% of the wealth, then obviously they're not working for the benefit or the interest of the other 99%. I'd say that kind of goes without saying. Now, some of you watching this video already started questioning these things a long time ago and have started drawing conclusions. Some of you might just be starting to question these things now. Others among you, and if this is the case, you're probably not watching this video, still aren't even questioning these things. You still have full faith in your government and the businesses and the banks, which have been doing nothing but destroy the world from the very beginning. But if you're one of those people that's just starting to think about these things and question these things because of this whole episode in our current history, this video is for you. So, in order to answer this question, in order to ask ourselves, is the 1% that controls the world operating in the best interest of the people? Let's actually take a good strong look at this, right? Let's go 6,000 years into the past when the system that we actually use today was actually invented, okay? So believe it or not, the system we use today was invented 6,000 years ago, and it has not changed one iota. Not one iota, right? So 6,000 years ago or so, the Sumerian Empire rose to power, right, in Mesopotamia, just after the fall of Acadia or thereabouts during that time, right? So you have the Sumerian Empire. These are, like, they weren't the first to use money, right, because the Akkadians kind of sort of invented the concept of money, but they were the first to invent banks, taxes, the bill of exchange, contracts, the overall commercial market that we see today, religion, right? There were spiritual traditions before them, but they created the first mainstream religion and schooling systems, which they used to teach the mainstream religion to their people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. They invented it all. And to this day, we're still using the exact same system that they invented. We just changed the language. We changed the religion. We changed the name of money. We changed the language used in economics and politics. But it's all still the same system, right? Back then, right, the religion was the state. Nowadays, we have the separation of religion and state. But back then, the religion was the state, the religion was the government, okay? And they were the politicians of that government. So What we've done since then is we just changed the face, but we haven't changed the system, right? Now, here's the thing, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. If you have a system that is corruptible, then the people that work in that system are therefore corruptible, right? Because if the system is self-corrupting, okay, then the people that operate in that system can't do anything to self-correct the system, right? It's a self-corrupting system is what we have, right? And what do I mean by that, right? Artificial intelligence, for example, is a self-programming program, right? It's a program that can program itself. It can upgrade itself. It can edit itself. It can update itself. It can change itself, supposedly for the better. Now, if you took that same idea, right, but instead of making it self-correcting, you made it self-corrupting, right? Which basically means it starts out really great and all, and then it slowly just destroys itself. That's basically how we've been setting up society from the very beginning. That's why there's not a single civilization in history that still exists to this day, except for India and China, right? These are the two oldest civilizations on our planet. China is about 4,000 years old as a civilization, and India is about maybe not quite as old as the Sumerians, so they're about 5,000 years old, but their roots do go back 8,000 years to the same roots as the Sumerians, or perhaps to similar types of roots. In any case, I'm getting a little off point here. Let's try and circle back around to where I was. Our system is corruptible, right? So how is our system corruptible? Okay, so let's analyze that for a moment. We've set up the system so that it's hierarchical. Okay, there's one guy on top, or maybe a couple people, or whatever the case may be. You know, today it's a group of people typically, but you know, back then it was one guy at top, and then you know, you had your head priests, and then your clergymen, and then your businessmen, your military, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? All these things. So you have this hierarchical structure where the power flows from the top down, authority flows from the top down, right? How is that a corruptible system? Well, honestly, how is that not a corruptible system? Basically, you are giving one person far more power and authority than everyone else, and you're basically telling everyone else you have to comply with what this person says. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. It doesn't matter if the entire population disagrees with it. You have to comply, okay? That is obviously a corruptible system, right? When you distribute power and authority unequally, okay, that's corruptible, all right? It can't be anything but corruptible, all right? Now, if you take a look anywhere throughout nature, you don't see any of that kind of organization happening, right? There is no hierarchical structure in nature where one thing has the final say in everything that happens. No, if you look at a forest, there's no tree in that forest that says, all the other trees have to comply with my root network, you know? No, that's not the way it works, right? They all equally contribute to the distribution of resources beneath the soil, right? In their root systems, right? And they all literally communicate with each other very much like a brain. Actually, their root systems are far more connected than our human brains are, which inherently makes them a lot more intelligent than us, actually. And so you don't see this anywhere throughout nature. There is no hierarchy anywhere throughout nature. There is holographic democracy, is what I call it, which is, and I shouldn't even have to call it holographic democracy, because democracy, the word democracy by itself should suffice, except unfortunately today everybody has a misunderstanding of democracy because we think democracy is like the US or the UK, right? Because we vote for our representatives, we call that a democracy. That's not actually a democracy. That's not how a democracy actually works. That's how we define it today, but That's not what a true democracy really is, right? In a true democracy, everyone's voting on every issue that concerns them, that directly affects them, right? That's a true democracy, right? So, for example, blockchain networks, right, with Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? A lot of cryptographers work with what they call democracy, and they actually use a true democracy where everybody takes a vote on every issue and the majority vote becomes the decision, right? Not, we vote for a person to represent us and then they make the decisions for us, right? Because maybe they won't actually make the decision that the people actually would have voted for if they had the ability to vote for it, okay? So what we call democracy today is not actually a democracy. It's really, qualifies as an oligarchy or an aristocracy, not a democracy. In fact, what we call democracy today in America is almost the same as what we call communism in China, okay? Literally speaking, the only real difference, and yes, there's a lot of minor differences, okay, let's not get hung up on details here, but the only real difference between the USA and China is that we vote for who becomes our president, our senator, our governor, our mayor, and in China you don't. Okay, which really all that means is that China is being more honest about the fact that they're a totalitarian dictatorship than America is really all that boils down to, right? So democracy doesn't exist today. Communism doesn't exist today. Socialism, believe it or not, does not exist today. Okay, the only thing that does exist today is state capitalism, right? State capital, where the government owns most things. In a communist society, you would say the government owns everything. In a democracy, you would say the government owns all of its own government programs, right? For example, Facebook and Google work very closely with the government, but the government doesn't own those companies, right? So that's another major difference between communism and democracy. But ultimately, the way it actually ends up playing out economically, it's the same fucking thing. There's no real actual difference going on. So we have this corruptible system in place, right? And right now, all the people around the entire world finally have the opportunity to actually sit down and think about this for a moment, especially right now, because amidst this entire, debacle, we are the ignorant people, the ignorant masses are fully capable of becoming fully aware, of how bad our governments and international businesses and the banks are at managing the economy, at managing commerce, at managing society, okay? And so now, what can we think about as a possible solution for this, right? So here's what I advocate. I advocate basically, you could kind of say it's the exact opposite of what we currently have. Instead of, a hierarchy where we have the guy at the top who makes all the decrees and everyone else has to fall in line or go through all this red tape of, these processes to try and undermine what the guy at the top is trying to do, right? Like, because the president has a lot of executive power to make decisions, but the Congress also has a lot of executive power to say, no, sorry, we're not going to let that happen. So there is a little bit of checks and balance that goes on in what we call democracy today, but it's still not really a democracy, and it's still problematic, and it's not providing fast enough solutions for big sudden changes that happen like this. So what if we had a political system that worked pretty much the exact opposite of what we have right now? That would mean instead of having a single person at the top of the... Now, the system of actually advocating isn't actually a hierarchical system, but if you wanted to, you could look at it as the exact opposite of what's going on now in our hierarchy, where instead of there being a person at the top, one person, you have the masses at the top, right? This would be, you can consider it kind of an upside down pyramid, right? Where the masses of people are at the top. And that is your decision maker, right? They are the ones who vote on the decisions, and the majority of that vote is what passes down to the people in the positions of responsibility, not power, to enact those decisions, right? So, the people that make the decisions are your everyday people that, employees that work in a job. They're not the business owner, they're not the supervisor, they're not a manager, they're just the people that run the cash registers and stock the shelves and manufacture the goods or sell the goods or service their customers, whatever the case may be, right? These are the people that actually have the power, the say in what happens, although it's a collective power, so it means it's the majority vote that makes the decision, not any one person among them, but it's a collective decision, right? Because what do we want to be doing? We want to be making the decisions that are actually in the best interest of the people. How do we know we're doing that? Well, there's only one way. Ask them, which decision would you like us to make, right? This is our problem. These are our potential solutions or options that we could do. Pick one or choose D, right? Write in your own option and, let's discuss possible options. And eventually the people make that decision, and then the people in the positions of power implement that decision throughout the system, all right? That is a self-correcting system as opposed to a self-corrupting system like we have now, right? Right now, we have a self-corrupting system. We vote for a person, or sometimes don't even vote for that person. They just assume power. And then we have to put up with the decisions that they make. In the meantime, people are starving, people are dying, people are homeless, wars that don't need to be happening are happening. And in the meanwhile of all of that happening, these 1%ers with all the control over the wealth are trafficking children and women for sexual exploitation, trafficking drugs and weapons, starting the wars that don't need to be happening, right? Creating mass confusion, propaganda, media control, blah, 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 right? All of these things that should not be happening, that would not be happening if the people were in power, rather than the politicians. Okay, so I call this the meritocracy. Now again, it's not actually the opposite of a hierarchy, like I explain it that way because you're not yet familiar with what the meritocracy is, and it's kind of a ultra simplified way of explaining it to help kind of introduce you to it. But ultimately, it's not even actually a hierarchy because, right, the people that are in power, right, it's not actually a pyramid that's going on here where the people have power over the people in positions of responsibility. That's not actually the way things are working here. In reality, what this system does is not create an upside down pyramid of power. It actually creates like more of a Merkaba, right? Think of it as the right side up pyramid and the upside down pyramid overlaid on each other, right? You get the Merkaba, right? It's more like that. Now, if you take that Merkaba, right, which is based on sacred geometry, and where does that come from, right? The Merkaba comes from Metatron's cube. Where does Metatron's cube come from? Metatron's cube comes from the fruit of life symbol, which is the final symbol in the flower of life pattern. Okay, this is sacred geometry. If you're not familiar yet with sacred geometry, I definitely encourage you to begin studying it because it's the fundamentals of life and reality. If you don't understand sacred geometry, you don't understand the fundamentals of life and nature and reality, okay? So definitely go ahead and study that. Now, So this fruit of life symbol, right? If you take that symbol, okay, which, now these are old things that I've drawn up that explain different things, but I can show you what's going on here in any case. So you take, like, this is the fruit of life symbol, right? Now this is a diagram of how electromagnetism works, but this is the fruit of life symbol, right? So you have all these circles here, right? And all these other circles, you can see that's the flower of life pattern that creates this fruit of life symbol, okay? Now from that fruit of life symbol, you get, which side is right? Okay, you get this, right? And that's the Metatron's cube. If you draw a straight line from one circle to every other circle, okay, you get this nice geometry called Metatron's cube, and within that you can see the Merkaba, right? The Star of David looking thing here, okay? This is the actual organizational system that I have designed, okay, that I call the metatocracy because it's based on Metatron's cube. All right, now how that works is, all right, so you take this and you turn that into a holographic depiction of that, right? And let me just pull that up real quick. All right. So now, you see there on my computer screen, that's a depiction of what the metatocracy actually looks like in full scale. So let me turn the camera around here. Okay, so you see this guy here, right? This is a depiction of the metatocracy, right? So it's the same overall shape as this, right? Except you're only like getting that part in the center there, right? And then each of these outer circles are basically holographic depictions of the same thing in the center here. That's what you're getting here, right? So each of these outer circles, right, are holographic representations of each of these circles here, right? If you zoom in on this circle here, for example, you bring it up, you get this circle here, okay? So this is how the metatocracy works. This entire big, imagine this is one organization here, right? This entire big green circle around the outside. This is one whole organization, one whole business, or one whole political structure, however you want to think about it, right? So this big green circle is what I call the holosphere or holographic sphere of influence of that one person in the center, right? Which you could call the CEO of this business or the president or whatever. Now remember, in this case, this is a position of responsibility, not a position of power and authority, okay? So this person, okay, is responsible for all of the people inside this circle, right? So all of these people that directly orbit this guy, which are, say, the COO, the CFO, the president, the vice president, the whatever, right, have these holospheres that orbit this primary holosphere here, right? So these guys are the center of these circles here, right? And the people that orbit them in this circle are their immediate, managers, right? So if you zoom in on this circle here, it brings up this here. This little center circle here is the exact same, it's just a copy and paste of this guy here, right? And now each of these little circles that orbit this guy are the centers of each of these circles on the outside, okay? So this person is directly responsible for these people, okay? And each of these people are directly responsible for these people, okay? Which means this person is indirectly responsible for all of these people. And this person is indirectly responsible for all of these people, right? Responsible, not powerful, okay? So here we have a system of equality, okay? Now, you could take this model and you could turn it into, a pyramid-style schematic, if you wanted to look at it that way. You could do that, but I intentionally set it up this way because of the perspective that it gives, right? Notice there's no up, down, left, right on here, right? There's forwards, backwards, left, right, but really, what is this? These are all circles, right? And they're all closed off from each other, right? There's no connection from these circles to any other circle except the person in the center, right? So this person is, directly connected to these people who are the centers of these circles, right? Who are the center of these circles, and these people are directly connected to these people who are the center of these circles, right? So you're connected, but you're also disconnected, right? You're connected responsibly, but you're disconnected in a form of power, right? So now this person can't just walk up to this person and give him an order, tell him what to do, right? In the current hierarchy of things, this person can walk up to this person and say, you need to do this right now. And if this person says no, this person says you're fired, right? In this model, this person doesn't have the authority to walk over here and tell this person what to do, because look at all the lines of separation of authority and power in between him and her, right? He can't just walk outside of this sphere of influence into this person's sphere of influence and tell him what to do, right? It's all about that sphere of influence. If this person wants this person or somebody in here to do something, then he needs to create an action or progress project request form and then send it to all these people within here, anybody that's capable of doing the work, and say, somebody please sign off on this and take responsibility for it. Right? No more orders, no more commands. Everybody has the right to free will to make a choice as to what they do or don't do. That said, obviously, if your boss is asking you to do something, you probably should have a very good reason not to do with it, because you're also in a position of responsibility, right? Remember, you are inside. If this is you, right here, then this is your immediate sphere of influence right here. Whatever this sphere of influence dictates that your regular responsibilities and accountabilities are, that's what you normally have to do. And anything outside of that, they have to ask you for it, right? So you're inside this holosphere, right? And notice there's another holosphere around this entire thing here, okay? Which this guy is responsible for, okay? So you are directly responsible to this holosphere, but you're indirectly responsible to this holosphere, all right? So this holosphere directly tells you what your daily accountabilities and responsibilities are, and this holosphere has the power to create extra demand for actions or projects that need to be done, but they have to be requested and you have to sign off on it, taking responsibility for it with your free will choice. Same thing with this, right? Because this holosphere is within this holosphere. So you're directly involved with this little holosphere, but you're indirectly involved with this holosphere and indirectly involved with this holosphere. And all of these holospheres, okay, basically dictate what your responsibilities and accountabilities are, right? Which, you sign an agreement to before you even take the job, right? Now let's look at this from the other side, the more political side, right? Let's say we need to vote, all right? Let's say this is the government of a country, and these outlying circles are various businesses with their various employees. Whoops, you're not seeing my hand here. And we have to hold a vote now to change a law for the entire country, right? We're going to vote on this law change, right? Maybe reducing taxes or something, whatever the case may be. Who knows? So how does that work? Well, how it works right now is this guy in the center says, we're going to do this. And then these people say, I don't want to do that, but fine. And, so they implement it. And then these guys implement it. And then everyone's like, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? Why? But we have to comply because we don't have a choice, right? Well, now, right, anyone, right, because this is a holographic democracy, right? There are people in positions of responsibility, but anyone has the right and the ability and the power to draw up a proposal to change a law or to change a policy or to change a procedure or to elect a new official into that particular office, or whatever the case may be, okay? Now, anytime a vote needs to happen, right, a proposal is made, well, now these people in the positions of responsibility have to take that proposal and send it out to the people, right? And all these people, right, the lowest among us, and I hate using that word because especially in this, there is no high or low, right? It's in and out. So this would be the outermost amongst us, okay? Or perhaps the innermost. I don't really know. It's such a new system, it even confuses me sometimes. But so these people vote on the issue first, right? They're the first people that get the chance to vote on the issue, all right? And even if, I mean, there's multiple ways we could work it. Maybe these outermost people vote first, and then it goes to the innermost people, and then the innermost people, and then the innermost people. Maybe we do it that way. Or maybe we just send it out and we have everybody vote at the same time. I mean, either way, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that with a system like this, you send it out so that everybody gets to vote on the issue, everybody that's directly affected by it, and then you actually figure out what the majority decision is. And now all that's left is for the people in positions of power to say, okay, we're going to implement this. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're going to implement this. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're going to implement this. Blah, blah, blah. And it's implemented, right? So from the outside in, we make decisions, and from the inside out, we implement those decisions. And this is how you create a self-correcting system for business, politics, and, you know, as a replacement for any form of hierarchy that we have. This is how you create a holographic democracy, and this is the solution we need for the future. This is what all of our businesses and all of our governments need to switch over to, okay? A system that's literally by the people, for the people, where the ones in power are the masses, and the ones in positions of responsibility are only in positions of responsibility. But honestly, can we actually trust the existing governments of this world to implement this new meritocracy type of system? Probably not, because again, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and our corrupted governments are not exactly incentivized to switch over to a system that ends the corruption, because they're profiting off of that corruption and they're happy to continue doing that. So chances are we're not going to see governments around the world implementing the meritocracy anytime soon. So here's what we can do, all right? And here's what we really should be thinking about right now, while we're all locked in our houses from COVID-19, is if we can't trust the governments of the world to implement a very simple system that actually provides for equality, freedom, and sovereignty for all, okay? Because that's what this system provides, all right? In a very simple and very integrated managerial fashion that is self-correcting rather than self-corrupting, right? If we're going to create this system, how are we going to create this system? Because we can't trust our governments to do it, right? They're not just going to stop corrupting themselves and create a self-correcting system, because, you know, they like having control and they like hoarding all of the wealth, right? That's should be no secret by now. I mean, if they didn't like having all the control and they didn't like hoarding all of the wealth, they probably would have implemented a better solution a long time ago. But in 6,000 years of history, and we still don't have governments implementing the right solutions, then I'd say it's pretty obvious that we can't trust our governments to implement these solutions for us. So what can we do? All right. Well, here's a funny little fact. The Declaration of Independence, you know, which was drawn up by the founding fathers of the United States, but it does not apply to only the founding fathers of the United States, okay? This document was drawn up for everybody in the world, right? And what does it state? Now, I don't have it on hand. I'm not going to go look for it right now, so I will be terribly paraphrasing this. But basically, the Declaration of Independence states quite emphatically that all people are born, okay, they don't earn it, they're born equal, all right? We all have the right to liberty, something in the pursuit of happiness. I can't remember the exact words they use, but basically I translate it, because those are kind of old style words, I translate it into the language that we're all more familiar with today, which is freedom, equality, and sovereignty. All right, that's what it all boils down to. The Declaration of Independence declares that all people are born free, equal, and sovereign. Okay? The system we have then corrupts that, right? We create corporations in your name so that we can pit laws against that corporation without ever telling you that there's actually a corporation in your name, and that's why you're susceptible to the laws. It's not that you and your human body are actually susceptible to the laws. It's just that your corporation, which is spelled just like your name but in all capital letters, is subject to that law, which isn't even actually you, right? That's a corporation on paper, right? And it's a limited liability corporation at that, which means you, as the representative of that corporation, are not even held liable for it, okay? But nobody knows this stuff because most people don't research the law, all right? Getting off point again. The point is, all right, we can't trust our governments to implement this solution. So what can we do? We can implement it ourselves. The Declaration of Independence says that we have the right to alter or abolish our own government if it is not meeting the needs of its people, all right? Now, we can't alter it because we're not in it. We're not part of it. We're not a politician in it. We can't alter it, okay? We can write to our senators, as if that would really actually do anything. We can't abolish it, right? I mean, how would you even go about abolishing the entire government of your nation? I mean, okay, so France kind of has somewhat of a history of abolishing and re-implementing their government. Of course, they just keep repeating the same mistake over and over. You know, revolution, abolish government, institute new government, same problems arise. Why? Because we're trying to solve the same problems with the same solution over and over again, which is the definition of insanity. So a revolution's not going to work. We can't wage war against our government. What would that do? Well, that would just kill us. That would just cause martial law. That would not be a solution. So what can we do, right? There's a lot of what can't we do going on here. What can we do? Here's what we can do. We can all get together on our own. We don't need the US government. We don't need the UK government. We don't need the Chinese government. We don't need the central banking systems. We don't need any of that, all right? All we need to do is come together ourselves, organize together ourselves, create the meritocracy amongst ourselves, use it to organize our businesses, and then use that to further organize our own society. And then we can take that society, and instead of making it have, you know, borders and boundaries like our current governments do, screw that. We don't need borders or boundaries. What is a society? Ultimately, it's a network of people, right? A society is a network of people. It has nothing to do with territories or boundaries, right? Or imaginary lines. It's just a network of people, right? It's a social network. That's what a society is. That's why the root word of society is social. Okay, so we don't need borders or boundaries. All we need to do is come together and form a network of people that creates a business, a network of businesses that create the government of that society, right? Where the people that work in the businesses are the boss of the society, and the people that operate the businesses are the politicians in society that implement the decisions made by their people. This is all we have to do. And all we have to do is come together ourselves. All right. There's a lot of people, since they don't study the law, they think we don't have a lot of rights that we actually do have. For example, what is a government? All right. A lot of people don't think about this. Think about this for a minute. What is a government? All right. A government is a group of people that came together and say, hey, we need to manage society, right? Because there's so many people and there's so many businesses, right? And it's such a fucking free for all. We need some sort of management, all right? And that's the whole idea behind government, right? You do need to have a government. You don't need to have a government that is removed from society and operating on a different capacity as the rest of society outside of commerce, all right? That don't actually know how society really operates, right? People that just write laws for the sake of writing laws, for the sake of creating a revenue for themselves that they shouldn't even need to create because, all right, imagine this. If our business owners were the politicians in our government, right, they don't need a salary. They don't need to be paid by taxes or anything of this sort and whatnot, because they're already getting paid from their business, right? The government, all right, is not supposed to be a profitable business venture, right? The whole purpose of government isn't to go and create a service that makes money to turn a profit. That's not the purpose of government, all right? The purpose of government is more or less a volunteer position, okay, to manage the things that aren't being managed by your typical businesses, right? Because typical businesses are operating for profit. We're making products or services that we're selling so that we can make a profit and pay our employees and have some money at the end of the day to live our lives, okay? Government isn't supposed to be about all that. Government is just, okay, you know, there's a lot of businesses and, you know, we need to have a way of transacting this business that works for everybody. We need to have a currency that works for everybody. We need to have regulations for, you know, exchanges and trades, right? So that we make sure everything is nice and fair and equitable, right? So equity law will always still exist. But we don't need myriads of traffic laws and admiralty maritime laws and victimless crime laws in order for the government to make a profit so that they make money, because the only thing they do is politics, right? No, that's not the way it should be. The people that are doing the politics should be the business owners who are already getting paid by their business, so they don't need to get paid for their service in the government, right? So we don't need taxes to pay the people in the government, right? This is a free service that they provide in order to make sure that their businesses that they own and operate do well in society, right? And so this is all we have to do. All we have to do is, all right, so if you're a business owner, all you have to do is implement the meritocracy in your business. And then get together with other people, other local businesses around you that are also implementing the meritocracy and network, all right? And now you use that network to create your local government, okay? And then these various local governments that are created all around create their, make a representative that represents them on the national government, right? So I live in Connecticut, USA. So, you know, if you live in Connecticut, USA, and you're interested in implementing the meritocracy in your business, right? This is our local playing field, so let's start there. We implement the meritocracy amongst ourselves, amongst our own businesses. We network our local businesses together. We create our local government amongst ourselves, right? Now, as of yet, in this scenario, we don't have our own currency. We don't have our own banking system, so we're still using the US dollar and the economy that exists. You know, we have to grow to a certain point before we can actually implement our own central banking system with our own currency. But we'll get there, right? So we start local, we give a representative to the local governments that create the national government, and the national governments, we create give somebody the position of, what's the word I'm looking for? Representation amongst that national government for the global government, right? And it's probably going to take a long time just to get to that level, right? We're just going to start this off on local levels all over the planet, right? Just contact your local businesses and ask them, hey, this is a great idea. Let's start the meritocracy. Let's come together amongst ourselves. Let's create our own government, right? Why? Because we can. Because we can. And because we can do it better. Because we actually know how society operates. We know how business works. We understand commerce, all right? If you've started a business, then you know what it means to write policies, because you've had to write policies when starting your own business for how your business operates, okay? Which means, and United States Code, Connecticut General Statutes, guess what those are? Policies. They're not laws, right? Policies. That's what those are. They are the policies that regulate the business that is the government of the state or the federal government, right? They are corporate policies. The United States government is a corporation. That's why they're called policies. That's why we call them police, okay? They're not laws. There's only one law, natural law. Everything else is either a legal system or it is a policy, and almost all laws of what we think of as laws today are corporate laws, right? Equity law, that's different. You're talking about trusts and whatnot. That's law, right? Because it's based on equity, which is based on what? Natural law, all right? So if you're a business owner, you're already familiar with writing policies. You already know how this works, right? That's why business owners should be the ones that make up the regulatory government of society, right? But let's not forget, it's the people that should be making the decisions, not the business owner, not the politicians, not the government that we set up, okay? That government that we set up is just for managing all of the things that the businesses themselves don't manage in society, right? Court systems for legal disputes, policy creation for, how to regulate business and commerce and transactions, things of this nature, right? So you do need a government, but it does not need to be a centralized government with a hierarchy, okay? It can be a decentralized government based on equality, freedom, and sovereignty for all, and we can set it up ourselves by networking together and just completely and totally ignoring the fact that there's another government out there. We don't need their representation. We don't have to work within the confines of their system, okay? We don't have to, all right? If we literally come together and ratify our own society, all right? We don't even need their permission to ratify it. All we need is a document that's basically called a constitution or a trust indenture agreement, right? That's basically what a constitution is. It's a social compact, a social contract. We sign that social contract, that's all the power we need. Once that contract is signed for the social network that is our own society, that society is ratified and we are sovereign in our own right, and there's not a damn thing the US government or the Chinese government or the UN can do about it, because they understand how the law works, right? The real law, the law that the 1% follow, is equity law, not the laws that us people are under, right? Most people have never even heard of the real law, which is equity law, okay? But in equity law, right, that document creates a trust indenture agreement, okay? Real law is the contract makes the law, right? That's an ancient maxim of law. The contract makes the law. If we have a contract that says we have our own society and these are our rules for society, okay, that makes us sovereign in our own right. That makes our society, our own network as a nation, sovereign in its own right, okay? That's all it takes. That's all you need, all right? And yes, it'll be a struggle at first, because we'll be working within the confines of the economy as it currently exists, with the central banking system as it currently exists, because we don't have access to our own money, we don't have our own currency yet. But once we grow to a large enough level, Now we can implement our own central banking system with our own currency, and I have a whole plan on how we can implement a new type of central banking system that makes it freedom and equality and sovereignty even more available than the meritocracy alone does. And that will be another video for another time. And I think that's it. I don't really know what else to say in this video, although I'm sure there's a lot of things that I wanted to say that I didn't say, and still a lot more things that I'm not even thinking about, but that's okay. There will be plenty of more time and plenty more videos coming up. So, you know, just do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, assuming you want updates, and also assuming you want those updates whenever I release new content. Make sure you click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button, and if you want this content to reach more people, make sure you click the little thumbs up button, because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. And you know, just subscribing isn't enough, just having watched it isn't enough. You actually have to click that little thumbs up button if you want this video to reach more people. Alright, so thank you very much. Have a good day.